In the summer of 1982, Wells Gray Provincial Park in British Columbia represented the epitome of Canadian wilderness beauty. Located approximately 120 kilometers north of Kamloops in the Clearwater Valley, this 5,000 square kilometer wilderness park contained 39 waterfalls, dramatic mountain peaks, wildflower meadows, and over 200 kilometers of hiking trails. It was the kind of place where families sought connection with nature, where the air was clean, and the landscape breathtaking, where urban concerns seemed to dissolve into the vastness of untouched forest. It was also the kind of place that seemed impossibly safe, far removed from the violence of cities. But in August of that year, this perception of safety would be shattered forever when 3 generations of a single family vanished without a trace, setting in motion one of British Columbia's most haunting murder investigations, and revealing that sometimes the greatest danger comes not from strangers passing through, but from those who know the landscape intimately enough to make people disappear. On August 2, 1982, Bob Johnson, 44, his wife Jackie, 40, and their 2 daughters Janet, 13, and Karen, 11, set out from their home in Kelowna for what was planned as a 2-week camping vacation. They were meeting Jackie's parents, George Bentley, 66, and Edith Bentley, 59, who were traveling from Port Coquitlam in their recently purchased 1981 Ford camper truck with a 10-foot aluminum boat secured on top. The retired Bentleys were experienced campers who loved the outdoors, and this trip represented a chance for 3 generations to spend quality time together in one of British Columbia's most beautiful regions. The family set up camp not actually inside Wells Gray Park itself, but just south of the entrance along Clearwater Valley Road near Phage Creek, at a site by the old Bear Creek prison location. It was a secluded spot, peaceful and private, exactly what they were looking for. On August 6th, Edith Bentley called her other daughter to check in, letting her know everything was going well. That was the last time anyone heard from any member of the family. When Bob Johnson failed to report to work at Gorman Brothers Lumber in Westbank on August 16th, his colleagues immediately knew something was wrong. Johnson was a 25-year employee known for his reliability. By August 23rd, the RCMP had been notified and a search began. The investigation initially focused on Wells Gray Park itself, given that was the family's stated destination, but the vast wilderness made searching extraordinarily difficult. Then, on September 13th, more than 5 weeks after the family was last heard from, a mushroom picker made a grim discovery. On a remote logging road off Battle Mountain Road, north of Clearwater, and 13 aerial miles from the Bear Creek campsite, he found a burned-out car with the driver's side door hanging open. When RCMP officers examined the vehicle, they found the charred remains of 4 adults piled in the back seat and 2 children in the trunk. Forensic examination revealed all 6 victims had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber weapon. The discovery of the bodies transformed the case from a missing persons investigation into a homicide inquiry, but it also presented investigators with a puzzle. The Bentleys' 1981 Ford camper truck, their camping gear, boat, motor, and other belongings were all missing. Police returned to the Bear Creek area and conducted a thorough search of what they now believed was the actual murder site. They found 6 spent .22 caliber ammunition shells, beer caps from a brand known to be Bob Johnson's favorite, full bottles of the same beer cooling in a nearby stream, and 2 sticks with sharp ends that the girls had likely used to roast marshmallows. The evidence painted a picture of a family enjoying a peaceful camping trip who had been ambushed without warning. The RCMP investigation initially went in the wrong direction based on a tip that the Bentleys' camper truck had been spotted heading east toward Ontario with 2 French-speaking individuals inside. Police invested enormous resources constructing a replica of the missing truck and driving it across Canada, generating media coverage and conducting interviews, hoping someone would provide information about the phantom French-speaking suspects. This costly wild goose chase consumed more than a year of investigative time while the real killer remained free just kilometers from the crime scene. The break came in October 1983 when forestry workers discovered the missing Bentley camper truck hidden on a deserted logging road on Trophy Mountain. Its location was telling. The maze of logging roads in that area was virtually impossible for outsiders to navigate, which meant the killer almost certainly lived in the Clearwater region and possessed intimate knowledge of the terrain. Police had accumulated over 13,000 tips during the investigation, but one name kept appearing with increasing frequency: David William Shearing. Born in 1959, Shearing was 23 years old at the time of the murders and lived on his parents' ranch just 3 miles from the crime scene. He was a high school graduate with training as a heavy mechanic, and his family was well connected locally. His brother worked as a sheriff, and his late father has served as a prison guard. But Shearing also had a troubling criminal history, including arrests for assault, driving under the influence, and drug possession. He had allegedly been involved in a hit-and-run death a year earlier, but had escaped charges. The crucial tip came when someone told police that Shearing had inquired about how to re-register a Ford pickup truck and repair a bullet hole in his door. Police had never publicly revealed that there was a bullet hole in the Bentleys truck. On November 19, 1983, 15 months after the murders, David Shearing was arrested in Tumbler Ridge, escorted under guard to Kamloops, and charged with 6 counts of second-degree murder. The arrest shocked local residents who knew him. His trial was scheduled to begin, but on the day it was set to start, Shearing changed his plea and admitted guilt to all 6 murders. As part of his guilty plea, he provided a written statement claiming he had walked out of the bush behind the camper and started shooting, killing the adults immediately, then returning later to kill the girls. This version of events was a complete fabrication designed to minimize the true horror of what he had done. It was only after sentencing that Shearing revealed the truth to investigators. He admitted he had been stalking the family for several days before the attack, watching them from the woods, becoming particularly fixated on 13-year-old Janet. On the evening of August 10th, he approached the campsite at dusk, armed with a Remington Model 572 .22 caliber pump-action rifle. The adults were sitting around the campfire when Shearing opened fire, methodically shooting George, Edith, Jackie, and Bob. He then kidnapped Janet and Karen, keeping them alive for nearly a week while he repeatedly sexually assaulted Janet. On August 16th, he took 11-year-old Karen into the woods and shot her in the back of the head. The next day, August 17th, he murdered 13-year-old Janet the same way. He then loaded all 6 bodies into the Johnsons' car, drove it to the remote location where it was eventually found, poured gasoline over everything, and set it ablaze. Supreme Court Justice Harry Mackay described the crimes as a cold-blooded and senseless execution of 6 defenseless and innocent people. Shearing received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. He has since changed his name to David Ennis and has applied for parole multiple times. In 2008, his first application was denied when the National Parole Board determined he still harbored violent sexual fantasies and had not completed sex offender treatment. His 2012 application was also rejected. He withdrew a 2014 application just before the hearing. When he applied again in 2021, online and paper petitions garnered over 100,000 signatures opposing his release. Family members have been forced to relive the tragedy repeatedly, campaigning against his parole every few years. Each application has been denied, with parole boards consistently ruling that he remains a danger to public safety, particularly to children. The Wells Gray murders occupy a unique place in Canadian criminal history. Unlike cases involving serial killers who operate over extended periods, Shearing's crimes occurred within a compressed time frame at a single location. Yet the case resonates decades later with an intensity that transcends its relatively brief timeline. This is partly because the crime targeted an entire family across 3 generations, eliminating not just individuals, but an entire family structure in a single act of violence. It also speaks to the violation of sacred space. The wilderness park that was supposed to represent safety and family bonding became instead the site of unspeakable horror. The case changed how Canadians thought about park safety and raised uncomfortable questions about how well we can ever truly know the people living in our communities. David Shearing was not a drifter or a stranger. He was a local resident, someone whose family was respected, someone who had grown up in the area and was considered part of the community fabric. The revelation that such a person could harbor such violent sexual fantasies and act on them with such calculated brutality forced a reckoning with the reality that evil does not always announce itself or come from outside. Sometimes it grows quietly in familiar places waiting for opportunity. The Wells Gray murders remain a permanent scar on British Columbia's collective memory, a reminder that wilderness beauty cannot protect us from human darkness, and that justice, while eventually achieved, can never restore what was taken from the Johnson and Bentley families on that August night in 1982.